Welcome back to another installment of Meet the Artist, a production of the Tucson Gallery inside of the Proper Shops at 300 East Congress. We're at the corner of Congress and Fifth Avenue in downtown Tucson, right across the street from the venerable Hotel Congress. And as you probably know, each week we have a different artist come in and do a meet and greet session with their fans and introduce them to even more of the adoring public. Before that session, we always record a podcast. It's called Meet the Artist, all of which you can see on our website, thetucsongallery.com. And today we are joined by another fabulous Tucson artist, someone with a kind of a unique style, I shall say, and we'll get into that. But Tamara Scott Anderson, welcome to Meet the Artist.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I did a little research. Now, you've been in the gallery for a while, but I did a little research on you. You've been doing art for some form for over 30 years.
Yes, I have. I studied it in college. I studied to be an art teacher. And back then, when I started my graduate work, I started my emphasis in fiber work. So I've done a lot of spinning and dyeing and weaving. I did a lot of needlepoint. During college, my aunt had a needlepoint shop, so I was used to working on a little grid. And once I graduated and I was teaching, we moved into a new home to us, but in the yard there was all these different things that needed to be hauled away. And I came across a piece of hardware cloth, which is a building material. And to me, it was just like, oh, I need to weave something through this because it's a grid work. Okay. Most people recognize hardware cloth as the material that they put around their plants to keep the javelinas from eating it or the critters getting it. So it's pliable. People always say chicken wire, and it's like, no, chicken wire is hexagonal or, different shaped and much more pliable, where hardware cloth is stiff enough that you can bend it, but it holds its shape. And so after that first piece, the first time I wove something through it, I was doing strips of paper, and it wasn't very long until I changed over to strips of fabric. So you're called a fiber artist because you work with these materials. Has that always been your mode? I mean, because I know you've been doing it for a while, but did you get started with, hey, I like to paint and draw, or did you? Well, in college, you have to take a range of classes. And when I was taking a sculpture class, this was back when macrame was first becoming big on the scene. And I was doing freeform macrame. I wasn't making plant holders. I'd found a gnarly piece of wood and I'd done a wall hanging. And my sculpture teacher in critique said, I think you should explore this soft textile more. So I did.
So you've been doing this pretty much a good chunk of your career.
I did. And I did some felting.
Some felting.
Felting. Well, that's where you take wool, which has been carded, and you rub it together. There's a whole process, but it goes into a fabric or whatever dimension you make. So I was doing that in a sculptural sense, combining it again with found wood and things like that. And so I continued to do that when I was teaching, and then moved around Arizona a little bit because my husband, we went up to Tempe so he could finish his graduate degree. And when I moved back to Tucson, the education was going through the back to basics phase where they were cutting art programs. Mm-hmm. So I found my way into interior design.
Okay.
And design elements are design elements. You just are using different materials or mediums. And so I was working in a furniture showroom as a designer, and I was doing these wall sculptures for commissions for my clients. And then when I bought my own business, I had a business partner. We bought Contents Interiors.
Oh, okay.
And at that point in time, my artwork went on the back burner.
Sure.
There's enough going on.
There's something about owning a business where
Exactly.
it takes a little more time.
Exactly. So for 18 years, I had a contents, interiors, furniture, and design showroom. And during that time, the fabric reps from Phoenix, all the big fabric houses, they would come and give me and my staff once a season the newest and latest, greatest fabrics. So for 18 years, I was just looking at these scrumptious fabrics. Textiles I've always been drawn to them. And so then we had our exit strategy and said, okay, when I'm 65, I'm going to retire. So 3 years prior to that, I said, okay, if I'm going to do that and I'm going to get back to doing my art, I need to have a body work. So I did 3 pieces. They came pouring out of me after looking at all these fabrics and whatnot. And I took them into the showroom and they sold right away. So it's like, okay, validation. You know, this is something that's unique. I've not seen anybody doing anything similar in my 30 years.
Yeah, your work is not only is the creation unique, but it seems to me that the formation of it is unique as well. And, and you know, the sort of, it looks like it's evolved not just from preset materials. A lot of the stuff that we have in the gallery looks like things that many people would have discarded, but you find a way to turn it into something beautiful.
Right. So up until I moved downtown, which was about 14 years ago, I was using commercial fabrics, yarns, beads, and that whatnot. And then when we moved downtown, I was taking my morning walks and I was collecting materials off the street and a lot of fiber. I mean, so much discarded clothing and whatnot out there. And so I started a stash and started using found materials in my weavings. And then once I got a reputation for using recycled and reclaimed materials, my friends started giving me things.
Thanks for the trash. I appreciate it.
Well, no, it's some jewelry. Actually, I brought a piece here. A couple of years back, a bunch of girlfriends cleaned out their closets and their jewelry boxes. And so I did this one piece. It's fairly large, and there's 3 female figures. There's a black woman, a yellow woman, and a brown woman. And their arms are entwined, and it's called Girlfriends. And they are all adorned with jewelry that's been given to me, and it's got a nice feel to it, and it keeps coming. So I brought this. I like to do torsos. So, you know, the beach bum here is made out of materials I found on beaches. Well, this is jewelry that's been given to me, and there's some pretty nice jewelry there, if you can see, in that vintage kind of way. So that's what I've been really focusing on here at the Tucson Gallery is my reclaimed and recycled rescued work, materials that have been found off the street.
Rescued work. That's the word I've been looking for. Rescued work.
Yes, okay. I rescue things off the street, out of the landscapes of wherever I am. And there's always some fun stories. This one's not up there, but I have one where I can tell you the red fabric came from a walk up in Flagstaff one time I was up there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Like when you see like the red fabric, does that become like, do you build a piece around that, or do you get everything assembled and then you're like, I see what this will become? It
varies. Like when the Girlfriends started, I was like, okay, I have to do a girlfriend. So there was a figurative piece. With the beach bum, I collected those materials off of the beaches of San Carlos, Mexico, and San Diego over a 2-year period. And once I had enough stuff, I said, okay, I'll start a piece. This piece has been kind of taking on a life of its own. Again, I like doing torsos. It kind of goes back to my art history days where you see the headless torsos of sculptures, and I've always been drawn to that. So I do torsos, and this one, again, all these materials. So I did a torso and started seeing how they were going to fit onto this canvas, so to speak. Actually, it's the aperture grid work, and it's taken on a life of its own.
So are you ever done with something, or do you always sort of see a way to add something to it?
There's a point where I'll stop. I'll feel like it's done, but then I'll go back, like the piece up here off the railroad tracks that we have here. It's very linear repetition of the railroad tracks and whatnot, and that was that way. That's an older piece, but before I brought it in here, I had found a whole new selection of materials that are now incorporated on there, so they get it added on to. And then this nest, I've started this new nest here, which I brought. And I moved recently, but 15 months ago, we moved over into the Monair apartments. And for 15 months walking around, I was finding I was in an apartment, so I couldn't just pick up anything I found. So I was picking up small pieces of fibers, wire, that kind of thing. And right after election in November, the signs were gone, but there were 3 metal sign holders. So those came home with me and got bent into this shape.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
And so now, just like birds do, when you see a bird, they go and they collect their material and they come back and they put it down and they come. So that's kind of how my nests are. This one, again, you can see it's just basically linear fabric pieces. There's a lot of rubber and earbud wires, things like that get discarded quite a bit on the street. So I'm finding that, or just little pieces of fabric that are left. Now, the one nest up here, nest with circular reference, I was collecting circular objects off the street for probably 3 or 4 years before I started that piece.
Okay.
And so you can see there's all manner of circular objects in that one.
You referenced it a couple of times, but Beach Bum to me is just extraordinary piece because it's rescued work. It's got everything that you typically would find discarded on a beach. And then there's this really cool character with sunglasses on the front there. So
yeah,
I feel sad for whoever lost that fella, but
I know.
But he makes a really good statement on Beach Bum. But how long then, once you had those materials, how long did it take to create that piece itself once you started working on it?
Well, that one, probably not that long. The hard part was, when I say not that long, probably a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. You know, people always say, how many hours did it take for your work? And I think, I talk in months, okay? And that's even when I'm working daily on it, because I do a lot of stitching and beading and embellishment on a lot of my work. So, yeah, if it's something that comes together really fast, I had the idea, I did the frame, and then had to stare at it a while, decide which materials I was going to use and how I wanted to start with the fabrics. The fabrics I can kind of consider my underpainting. For somebody who's doing an acrylic or an oil painting, they'll often do the ugly painting underneath where it's contrasting colors or whatever. And then the layers that they add, then it becomes more defined and more recognizable. And that's kind of what happens on my hardware cloth. I shape and paint the hardware cloth, and it's not always the same color all throughout. And you can see that in different areas because it does end up showing much like a warp would in a weaving. And then I weave fabrics through and overweave more fabrics. And there's a lot of stitching involved, and a lot of beading and embellishing and more embellishing. Wow. I'm layers of texture and color. That's what excites me.
So when I look at your work, I see something that many people are going to look at and think is amazing, but it's not traditional. So it takes some people a while to get used to it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And another thing is my work doesn't show quite as well two-dimensionally online because you don't get a feel for all of the texture and all the embellishment. So it's one of those things that you look at it and you go, oh, wait, what's that? And it draws you in, and then you start to see how much is going on, how many different colors of thread, how many different colors or layers there are of elements in the piece.
Absolutely. You can kind of get lost, just start staring into it. And it's like those Russian nesting dolls. You just keep going in and in. You're like, it just keeps
example.
more and more information in there. But for someone that does, and I'm just going to call it an atypical art style, if there are artists out there that are trying to find their way and they're not comfortable with, the acrylic and they want to find their own path forward, what advice can you give them? Because this seems like something where you have to have some patience.
Yeah, and yes, and it's interesting. I don't know. I guess I'm still finding my path, and I'm very blessed that you've all invited me to show here at the Tucson Gallery, where I can focus on that rescued, reclaim, and repurpose work. There's something out there when you're walking around. If you walk downtown areas, along the railroad tracks, along the washes, it's amazing how much discarded materials is out there. It's an unending flow. It's very sad. But I get past all of the trashing things and I look and I say, oh, there's this great piece of wire that has all these different colors, and I see it as an element. I can look past the trash and see the one item or the few items that can be salvaged or rescued and reused.
So you focus on one type of art here at the gallery, but you're on display in other places. Can you share some of those?
Yes, and that's more of the fiber wall sculptures, and I actually do have the one here, the purple prickly that we have, and that is a little more like my traditional, where I'm using commercial fabrics and commercial beads. Actually, with this one here, though, I actually dyed some reusable T-shirts. I did ice dyeing and used them. So there's all different kinds of levels. But yes, I'm showing my more, I don't know, what should we call it? The fiber wall sculptures. They're a little more, they're less trash.
Not that the Tucson Gallery has trash.
Well, they do. I did one.
It's rescue trash. It's rescue trash.
Well, where the other ones, it's shiny and nice and pretty. My pretty work, so to speak.
Well, I think some of your quote unquote trash is turned into some very pretty work. But
I agree.
Where are some of those places people can see that as well?
That's up at the Southern Arizona Arts Guild Gallery.
Okay.
Up in La Encantada.
Okay.
And then I'm a member of the Southern Arizona, the Fiber Artists of Southern Arizona, as well as the Southern Arizona Arts Guild.
I didn't realize that there was a Fiber Artist of Southern Arizona, so there's a lot of you out there.
Well, it's a small group. There's 11 of us, but there are a lot of fiber artists out there.
Okay.
There's another guild, the Tucson Hand Spinner and Weavers Guild, which incorporates not only weaving and spinning, they do dyeing and felting and wearable clothing, which is fashion, and there's a lot of jewelry that is made with textiles and beads. So there's a lot of fiber artists out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to come see some really good looking trash, head down to the Tucson Gallery. That we are at 300 East Congress. We are between Hotel Congress and Playground and the Rialto Theater. You can't really miss us right here in the corner. Yeah. Every week we do a Meet the Artist event where we invite the public in. Tonight, individuals will chat with Tamara about her style. And then each week we have a different artist. Usually it's on a Thursday or a Friday. So you want to head over to our website, thetucsongallery.com, for all of those details. And while you're over there, you can check out the work. As Tamara said, hers does not translate as well two-dimensionally, but you can definitely get a sense of what you'll see when you come into the gallery. And please do share us on Facebook, Instagram, and tune in every week for another segment of Meet the Artist, or listen to them all on our website, thetucsongallery.com. Before we wrap up, Tamara, any last words for us? Yes, I wanted to say that starting today through the weekend, I am going to be taking $50 off my Dittrius nests of the urban desert rat. Okay. So people are looking for artwork that they can put outside on their porches or whatnot in the outdoors. And a lot of my reclaimed, recycled work is suitable for displaying outdoors. All right. So depending on when you're listening to this, missed, you might want to check with the gallery to make sure that fabulous offer is still in place. But we look forward to inviting you down and checking out Tamara and all of the other fabulous artists here at the Tucson Gallery. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.